please join me in turning off your cell phones and other handheld devices. So, hello everybody. It's nice to be back here in front of you. We're going to do 3 pieces today. One of them is an old familiar one, which we haven't done here, but some of you might know it from the recording. And 2 new pieces, which are on the new recording, which has been recorded already, but is going to come out, well, we'll see when it comes out, sometime in the next year. But one of the pieces, which is exciting, we're going to start with Ferdinand the Bull. Anyone know Ferdinand the Bull here? Yeah. And the second one is a story by Hans Christian Andersen, Hans Christian Andersen. And it's The Ugly Duckling. And that is going to be a world premiere, actually. So we've recorded but we've never performed it live, so that's exciting. And then we'll do another klezmer piece. That's kind of a collection, for those of you who might have remembered them from the past, it's a collection of all the characters from the past stories all together. It's called The Matzo Ball Man. So, with that, we'll launch right into Ferdinand the Bull.
Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. All the other little bulls he lived with would run and jump and butt their heads together.
But not Ferdinand.
He liked to sit just quietly and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot in the pasture under a cork tree. And he would sit in its shade all day and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, she would worry about him. Why don't you run and play with the other little bulls and skip and butt your head, she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. I like it better here, where I can sit just quietly and smell the flowers. And because his mother was understanding, even though she was a cow, she let him sit there and be happy. years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew until he was very big and strong. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted most of all was to be picked to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to sit just quietly under the cork tree. And smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in funny hats to pick the biggest, fastest, roughest bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. Ran around snorting and butting, leaping and jumping so that the men would think that they were very strong and fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew that they wouldn't pick him. And he didn't care. So he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look where he was sitting. And instead of sitting on the nice cool grass in the shade, he sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a spoon sat on you, what would you do? Oh, did it hurt? Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran around puffing and snorting, butting and bowing the ground as if he were mad. The 5 men saw him and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest and fiercest bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. What a day it was. The flags were flying. The bands were playing, and all the lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade into the bull ring. First came the banderilleros. Next came the picadores. And next came the matador, the proudest of all. And then came the bull, and you know who that was, don't you? Ferdinand went to the middle of the bull ring thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But not Ferdinand. When he saw the flowers in the lady's hair, he just sat down and sniffed. He wouldn't fight no matter what they did. He just sat and sniffed. And the banderilleros were angry. And the picadores, they were angrier. And the matador was so angry because he couldn't show off, he cried. So they had to take Ferdinand home. And you're sitting there still under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers just quietly. He is very happy. So again, this next piece is by Hans Christian Andersen, The Ugly Duckling. Does anyone know this story? Yeah, I would think. So again, this is a world premiere. It was written by a friend of mine, Ken Woods, who's a cellist living in Cardiff, Wales, in the United Kingdom. And it's just an amazing piece. It was beautiful summer. The wheat fields were golden, the oats were green, and down among the meadows, the hay was stacked. Around the field and meadowlands rose vast forests and distant mountains, in which deep lakes lay hidden. In the midst of all this, a duck sat on her nest, hatching her ducklings. Egg-sitting is a dull business, and hardly anyone came to see her. She was bored and fed up. At last the eggshells began to crack, one after another. Suddenly, the nest exploded in a cacophony of peeps and tweets. Said the mother duck, and lickety-split, they all waddled out to have a look around. How wide the world is, said the young ducks. Do you think this is the whole world? Their mother asked. Why, it extends on and on, clear across to the other side of the garden, and right on into the parson's field, though that is further than I have ever been. Right then, she said as she got up stiffly, off to the lake. But as she stood,
she noticed that one egg was still unhatched, a large gray egg with little scratches on it. How much longer is this going to take? She groaned as she sat back down. I'm really rather tired of it all. Hours passed, and at last the big egg did crack, said the young one, and out he tumbled. Mother Duck looked him over critically. He was very big and very ugly. Mother Duck, her patience at an end, sighed in resignation. The next day, the weather was splendid, and off to the pond marched Mother Duck, family in tow. Let's go find some tasty eel heads. One duckling after another plunged into the warm, bright water. Soon, even the big, ugly, gray one was swimming along. Come with me. I'll lead you out into the world and introduce you to the duck yard. Watch out for the cat. Mind that you're next to that great old duck over there. She is the noblest of us all and has Spanish blood in her. That's why she's so fat. Shake yourselves off and don't turn your toes in. They did as told, but the other ducks in the yard looked on indignantly. Another brood? As if there aren't enough of us already. Look at him! He's so big and ugly. Let's get rid of him. One duck charged up and bit his neck. Leave him alone, cried Mother Duck. But before she could stop the assault, she sensed the great Condessa Duck approaching. What the nice-looking children you have, Madre Papa. Pero Santa Maria Madre de Dios bendito, not that big one over there. It's a pity you can't hatch him again. That can't be managed, your ladyship, said Mother Duck. He took too long in the egg. It's not my fault. Well, the others are pretty enough. Ready yourself at home, mis patitos. And if you should find a tasty eelhead, you may bring it to me. Soon the ducklings felt right at home. But the poor ugly duckling was nipped by the ducks, pecked by the chickens. Even the turkeys bit him. He was so ugly that he became the laughing stock of the entire barn, chased and teased mercilessly by everyone, even his own brothers and sisters.
We wish the cat would catch you.
But he probably doesn't want your ugly feathers on his paws.
His mother wouldn't look at him. Ducks nipped, hens pecked, and the turkeys bit. Heartbroken, he ran away over the fence and across the great marsh. He settled in a quiet copse, and there he lay all night long, crying himself to sleep with the sound of distant laughter in his ears. He woke to the morning sun and the loud voices of two wild ganders nearby. These fine man-gooses walked and talked with the arrogance of youth. Say there, comrade, that's quite a look. Come with us.
In the other marsh nearby, there's some fine geese, all nice young lady gooses who know how to quack and lay. You're so ugly that you'll completely turn the heads and shine a better light on us. Gunshots suddenly shattered the stillness of the marsh, and the two ganders dropped dead by his side, turning the water red with their blood. Shots exploded again, and flocks of geese rose up into the air in panic. Another volley crashed, echoing over the marsh, as blue smoke rose from the trees, drifting like a cloud over the water. The bird dogs came crashing through the swamp, driven to a frenzy by the scent of blood. He tried to hide his head, but at that very moment, a huge yellow dog crashed through the underbrush, his tongue lolling from his mouth. Paralyzed with fear, the duckling could smell the foul reek of the dog's breath. As their eyes met, the beast paused, but off he splashed without touching the duckling. In shock, he thought, I'm so ugly, even a dog won't have me. He waited hours before his heart slowed, and he dared to look around. Then away he fled across field and farm, fleeing for days and then weeks. Wherever he went, he sensed every creature mocked his ugliness. It was mournful autumn. There was a chill in the air. The leaves turned yellow, red, and brown. The heavens went clear, then darkened to cold and gray, while low clouds descended, heavy with snow and hail. One evening, as the sun was setting and he rested, exhausted on the shore of an immense, dark lake, three large, handsome birds appeared out of the reeds. The duckling had never seen creatures so exotic, so beautiful, dazzlingly white, with long, graceful necks and terrifying black eyes. Swans. They uttered an alien cry as they unfurled their magnificent wings and spun into the air, taking flight to warmer climes. Circling overhead, they climbed higher and higher. A strange feeling stirred in his breast as he watched. He swam circles in the water. He craned his neck to follow their course, and overcome with emotion, he uttered a cry so shrill and strange that he frightened himself. When he could no longer see them, he dived down to the very, very bottom of the black waters. When he surfaced, he felt puny and completely alone. It was remorseless winter. Seemingly overnight, it became so bitterly cold that the duckling had to swim to and fro in the water to keep it from freezing. But every night, the hole in which he swam got smaller and smaller and smaller until one morning
It froze so hard that the duckling had to paddle continuously to keep the encroaching ice from closing in. Finally, at the end of his energy, he could swim no more, and he gave himself to the ice and was frozen fast. It would be too sad to tell of all the hardships and wretchedness he had to endure during the cruel winter. The wind that sailed like knives over the frozen surface of the lakes, the frantic plunging for scraps of food that flew by, and worst of all, the searing loneliness and despair. When the first green sprout poked through the snow and the warm sun shone once more, the duckling was just barely alive among the reeds of the marsh. The lark began to sing. It was ecstatic springtime. The world seemed intoxicated with floral scents, but the duckling could still feel winter's cold ache in his bones. Then from the thicket before him emerged the same three swans, sliding from the tall reeds onto the smooth water of the marsh. The duckling recognized them and was overwhelmed with sadness and loneliness. He sensed their power and ferocity, and he decided to charge them to invite their violence and end it all. They'll peck me to bits because I'm so ugly, he thought. Better be killed by them now than endure their taunting tomorrow. So he flew into the water straight towards the swans at full speed. They saw him and reared up, wings outstretched. "Kill me!" he cried as he bowed his head down over the water to wait for death. But looking down, he saw his own image mirrored in the surface of the lake. No longer was it the reflection of a clumsy gray bird. His neck was long and noble, his wings broad and powerful, his eyes black and fierce. He was a swan. The three swam around him, stroking him gently with their bills. "This new one is the most handsome of all," they said, bowing their long necks in his honor. For the first time in his life, he felt he might belong. He thought about everything he had endured. He rustled his feathers and joyously took to the sky, the other swans following in his wake. And he cried out with full heart, I've never dreamed there could be such happiness." Okay, so the next one is called the Matzo Ball Man, or What Goes Around Comes Around. And I'm going to need a little help from the audience on this. So this one is, let's say, loosely modeled off another story with a similar name as the Matzo Ball Man. Anyone want to hazard a guess? Named after a well-known cookie, yeah. The what? The Muffin Man? No. I suppose it could be. Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah. The gingerbread, what?
Gingerbread man.
The gingerbread man. Yes, the gingerbread man. Now, good call on that one. Now, this one has a refrain in it. And, let's see, how does it go? Alessandra, do you remember how it goes? How's it go? Can you help me out here? What's it start with? Ah, that's right. Okay. So it goes, run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the Matzo Ball Man. So it comes up various times in the story. When it comes up, I'd love for you guys to join in. Let's just practice that right now. You guys do it with me. Ready? Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the Matzo Ball Man. All right. Louder? Yes. Rachel says louder. All right, let's try it again. You know, just just a little lines after dinner. You know, digestion. But let's try this again. Ready? Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the Matzo Ball Man. All right, I think that'll do it. Yeah. Once upon a time, there was an old woman who lived all alone. In a bit of inspiration, she fashioned a matzo ball into the shape of a little boy and instilled it with all her dreams and desires. She then dropped it into a boiling cauldron of chicken soup and stirred for 3 days and 3 nights. Well, we all know the restorative power of chicken soup. And at times she could see a strange object turning over and over on the waves like an otter, until at one point it swam to the edge of the pond, climbed out, and said, "Geez, mother, that there's hot." And looking down, she said, "My boy chick, come here, give your mama a hug." But then he backed away with a mad look on his face while saying, "Boundaries, mother, and I think it's time to go." He then proceeded to tear around the little house, jumping over tables, under chairs, knocking over this and that, and generally wreaking havoc. This wasn't working out the way the woman had planned, so she grabbed a large cleaver off the counter and started chasing him around the house. He dodged and jumped while she hacked away, leaving behind a sorry trail of wood chips and broken pottery. Just when she thought she finally had Courtney ducked under her dress and dashed out the door. As he skipped away, he howled over his shoulder, "Run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the Matzo Ball Man." He scudded through the dusty streets and rounding a corner came upon Mayor Meyer's house, made of real brick and located right smack in the center of town. It was market day in Chelm, and his eyes were greeted with a bustling panoply of horse-drawn carts and peddlers peddling their wares. There were farmers from the countryside and fishmongers who sat on empty herring pails. Women with scarves on their heads carrying cheese, chickens, and baskets of eggs, and trailing barefoot children, and scholars with long beards holding enormous leather-bound books. Feeling small and vulnerable, he steered clear of the crowds. He had just turned down a side street when he came upon a well-dressed young couple coming his way. As the sounds of the market faded away, he looked the couple over. The man looked uncomfortable in his fine clothes and appeared weary, but the woman walked lightly. He caught the man's eye and called out to him, "I've run from a woman my life she did grant, and now I'm going to run away from you. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the Matzo Ball Man." A shadow passed over the man's face, and he started tugging at his wife.
but she took one look at the little ball of dough and started giggling uncontrollably. "Hoy, look what you've done," the man said crossly. "Time was she would not laugh at all, and now she can't stop. We're looking for the doctor, not some schmendrick with a mouth larger than his brain." Their footsteps echoed on the cobbled streets, and the man tenderly put his arm around his wife. Her shoulders shook with silent mirth as they turned and walked away from the irksome dumpling. The experience left him flustered, but being a resilient sort, he recovered his steps soon enough and, ambling out of town, came upon a ramshackle cottage, the last on the road. He heard the melancholy strains of a cello coming from inside, while outside on the porch was a man of indeterminate age sitting alone with a book and a sour expression on his face. He was dressed in a wrinkled old black suit that was probably out of fashion when it was bought. There was a violin case at his feet. The matzo ball man called out to him tauntingly, "I've run from a woman my life she did grant, a wife who laughs and a husband who can't, and now I'm going to run away from you. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the matzo ball man." Startled, the man looked up and began to call to the house, "Mendel, you won't believe what?" But he stopped himself and said, "Oh, never mind," and seemed to visibly deflate before the matzo ball man's eyes. "Just go away and leave me alone." The little man was at a loss for words. "Come on, have a run." The man replied, "Here's a news flash, sonny. I don't run. Do I look like I run? Secondly, why would I want to eat you? With my luck, I choke on the first bite. What's more, look at you standing in the street. No shirt, no shoes. Disgusting. Would you eat you? Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." And with that, he turned his back and buried his face in a dog-eared book and started marking in the margins with an inch-long stub of pencil. Dumbfounded, the matzo ball man continued out of town. Not being one to dwell on past disappointments, no sooner had his buoyant spirits revived than he spied a farmer riding towards him on a skinny old nag headed into town to spend some newly acquired cash. "Soldo jest," called out the farmer. "What is this? A little man of dough? Looks tasty, and I am hungry after all my hard work. This day just gets better and better. Now it's time for lunch." But the matzo ball man grinned as his eyes flashed with malice, and he said, "I've run from a woman my life she did grant, a wife who laughs and a husband who can't, a fellow with a fiddle and a pessimistic bent, and now I'm going to run away from you. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the matzo ball man." The farmer kicked and cursed his horse into action, but the poor beast was no match for the spry legs of the little man, who evaded them with ease. His good mood now completely restored, he began to head out of town, leaving behind the narrow streets of the shtetl for the increasingly rural road, the countryside. He passed fields of beets and barley, long rows of potatoes and turnips. A large black crow cawing overhead gave him a fright, and for half an hour he hid behind a hand-painted signpost with an arrow that pointed back to Chelm. Gradually the fields turned into woods of birch and alder, which slowly yielded to a dark and ancient forest of massive oaks. As the road narrowed, he could see large patches of mushrooms and seas of fern in the twilight under the boughs, and looking between the trees, he'd sometimes catch fleeting glimpses of enormous shaggy creatures deep in the woods, half hidden, but never fully seen. A sense of gloom began to settle over him. And it was at this time, with real relief, that he happened upon an old man sitting down and resting his bare feet in a cold stream while silently looking down into the water. There at his side was a large black doctor's bag. His spirits revived at the prospect of tormenting another soul, and the matzo ball man decided to break the old fool's reverie. He cried out in the most obnoxious voice he could muster, "Run, run as fast as you can! You can't catch me, I'm the matzo ball man!" The old doctor looked up from his musings and said, "Well, what do we have here? A little snack, I think. Come on out the Kaka, have a go. Don't you want to eat me? What's that you say? Are you lost, little man? Do you need help?" I said, "Run, run! Come closer, little boy. I can't hear you. These old ears are not what they used to be." And the matzo ball man came closer and yelled in the old man's face. I said, "What? You really must speak up. This water is very loud." The matzo ball man went right up to the old man in his big black coat, shimmied up his sleeve to his shoulder, and yelled right in his ear, "I've run from a woman my life she did grant, a wife who laughs and a husband who can't, a fellow with a fiddle and a pessimistic bent, an avaricious farmer with a gluttonous intent, and now I'm going to run away from you. Run, run, as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the matzo ball man." But at that, the old man snatched him up in his surprisingly nimble and strong fist, popped him in his mouth, his jaw snapped shut, and swallowed him in one go. Well, what do you know? A little matzo ball man. Delicious. limoncello. My name is David Yankler from New York City. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you this evening. I'd like to send you off with some words of wisdom. Here's a recipe for success. Be kind to others and treat them best. Don't taunt, don't mock, don't bite or hurt. Or you'll be bitten and made dessert.
So that last rhythm is of some interest. Probably Yasmin knows it. It's a sedi donka. It's a Bulgarian rhythm. What is this? It goes. It's 3-2-2, 3-2-2, 2-2, 3-2-2. So 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2. Yeah, everyone got that? We do once more. 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2. And do you want to just play the beginning of that again, just so you guys can hear what that actually sounds like, right? It sounds like it's going to be strange, but in fact, somehow it works out a little bit. Just play the beginning of this. And anyway, I just feel like share that with you guys. It's kind of crazy.